Hello everyone and welcome to the presentation on human trafficking. Now, when I was developing this presentation, I thought of using the image which is fairly well known to most of us as my opening slide. That being the one of the little girl with her mouth being covered, looking very obviously distressed. And whilst that is a very real element of human trafficking, I also did not want to perpetuate the idea that human trafficking is only a violent, obviously forced abduction of young children. That is very real, very relevant, but human trafficking is, in fact, often a very silent, seemingly benign action that can and does go undetected because of the victim's knowing or unknowing complicitness in the situation. So over the past few years, we have been sensitizing our cabin crew instructors and designated examiners to the phenomenon of human trafficking, as well as the role that cabin crew can play in identifying instances of human trafficking. We've also shared experiences of suspected human trafficking at conferences and in classrooms, so we're not going to use today's platform to repeat information that is already known to us. However, in an African context, and specifically a South African context, it is important that we are aware of developments and trends in this regard, as well as resources that are available to us. The first tool that I found to enable us to further understand human trafficking is a new definition known as the AMP model. Now, this is a device used to illustrate and articulate the general definition of a victim of severe forms of trafficking in persons. It was developed by the organization humantrafficking.org, and it is used by the federal government in the United States. Essentially, what it says is that if you have these three elements merging, you may have a case of human trafficking. So action plus means plus purpose equals human trafficking. Under action, we look at things like recruitment, transport, transfer, harboring, or providing or obtaining human beings. Using either force, fraud, or coercion for commercial sex or labor or services. When we speak about using force to obtain people, it is using abduction or threat or the use thereof. Deception would fall under the bracket of fraud, and that would also include promises of romance, love, acceptance, blatant lies, manipulation, promises of employment. Coercion includes things like giving payment, abuse of power or vulnerability, giving benefits which meet the need for food, clothing, education, or shelter of the individual. With regards to our purpose section, under commercial sex, here we refer to things like forced prostitution or pornography. With regards to labor and services, we look at forced marriage, forced child beggars, organ theft, forced labor, criminal activities, including drug trafficking, which are all essentially services which human beings have been forced into rendering. Trafficking in persons is a global phenomenon of epic scale and is considered to be the largest source of profits for organized crime after drugs and guns. According to the United Nations, an estimated 21 million people are forced into some form of exploitation globally. Although we don't always see the efforts of our government in the media, the South African government does view human trafficking in a serious light. The Department of Social Development is part of the Cross-Border Forum on Human Trafficking, which promotes sharing of best practice models, research findings, policy and programmatic responses on national and cross-border cooperation on preventing human trafficking. The Cross-Border Forum on Human Trafficking comprises countries bordering South Africa, including Mozambique and Swaziland. The department renders services to victims of human trafficking through its Victim Empowerment Program. These services include things like counseling, reintegration into society, and skills to enable reintegration of the victim. Research findings from a study conducted by the Human Sciences Research Council in 2010 into the dimensions of human trafficking in Southern Africa identified 4 key human trafficking patterns. These are trafficking to South Africa from outside of Africa, trafficking to South Africa from within Africa, trafficking within the national borders of South Africa, this being domestic human trafficking, and trafficking that uses South Africa as a transit point to other countries. According to africacenter.org, at any given moment, 3.5 million Africans are being trafficked. 99% of victims in West Africa are trafficked within their own country or region, 83% in North Africa, 90% in East Africa, and 62% in Southern Africa. 17% of the victims detected in North Africa originate in West Africa. 7% of the victims detected in East Africa originate in West Africa, and 31% of victims detected in Southern Africa originate in East Africa. The social, political, and economic conditions that enable the trafficking of persons include, but are not limited to, high levels of poverty, unemployment, inequality, low levels of education, and a culture of violence, including gender-based violence. There's a myth that trafficking victims are targeted because of their physical attributes. The fact is, traffickers target the most vulnerable people, including those who are forcibly displaced because of war or famine in their countries. As a signatory to the United Nations Protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking, and in response to the growing phenomenon, government enacted the Prevention and Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act in 2013 to provide for the prosecution of offenders, prevent the trafficking of persons, provide protection for victims of trafficking, and to provide effective enforcement measures. Now, hopefully you've noticed the telephone number that has been on your screen for the past few slides. That is the South African hotline for reporting cases of suspected human trafficking. We encourage you to take that number down and to use it if you do suspect someone is being trafficked. It is only when we step up and step forward that we can possibly prevent someone from being exploited. We've discussed how aviation is an easily accessible means of transport which is used to move victims from one point to another. Because of this, cabin crew are often the people that spend the most time with human trafficking victims whilst they are on the aircraft. Cabin crew may not be able to prevent human trafficking, but being able to recognize signs of potential human trafficking will go a long way in saving people. At ICAO level, the Cabin Safety Group, in conjunction with the United Nations, has developed Circular 352 for use by operators and ATOs in their training. It is a guideline for training cabin crew on identifying and responding to trafficking in persons. This circular is available on the ICAO website, and we will also post a copy of the circular to this meeting under files. The ICAO Cabin Safety Group is currently updating this document, so keep an eye out for a new version in the near future. Another circular is being developed for use in conjunction with Circular 352. Circular 357 will be guidelines for reporting trafficking in persons in aviation, and it should be available by the end of this year. Worldwide, many operators and states have expressed challenges in developing suitable training material for human trafficking. To assist, the tool for capacity building of cabin crew on identifying and responding to trafficking in persons was developed by ICAO in collaboration with the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. This is a free-of-charge e-learning program for use by states and operators that enables trainees to understand the issue of trafficking in persons, including the elements of trafficking, why it happens, and what is being done to combat it, identify potential cases of trafficking in persons, and respond to suspected trafficking in persons, including producing a report of the occurrence. You will also obtain a certificate of completion at the end of the e-learning session, and we do encourage you to make use of the resources that are available both locally and internationally to improve yourself, to expand your knowledge. The link below will lead you to the course. You will have to register first, and we will also post a copy to that link in the chat section, so look out for that. Human trafficking can happen to anyone, no matter your race, age, or gender. Interesting is that in Africa, under the age of 18, boys are more trafficked than girls, and this is because they are used for slave labor and also forced begging. Over the age of 18, girls are more trafficked because they are then used for forced labor and also sexual exploitation. It is up to us as cabin crew, instructors, designated examiners, as humans, to look out for one another and to prevent human trafficking to the best of our ability as best as we can. Thank you.